We're on Dorchester Ghost Walk today.
We put you in mascot in.
Oh yeah.
Kind of swap over and everything, and then you'll.
Oh dear.
I love the Google eyes there, Shaz.
Oh dear. So we're waiting for some guy to turn up. Right, so he will be in Victorian dress. He will look weird.
Yeah, a little bit. Noticeable.
Noticeable. Okay, noticeable. Okay. I'm going to try a new fun app today. Oh, that was a Just Eat guy. It wasn't our guy.
The consent thing with Just Eat guy looks interesting.
Interesting. That's disturbing in itself, really.
Yes. It's not 5 minutes yet. It's starting around.
Not yet. I will in a bit, but I've got everyone's backs at the moment, so. We made it after 3 years. We made it.
Yeah.
Mind you, Kara wasn't with us last time. It was Claire, wasn't it?
Yes. There's a human by the way.
Claire is a human, yes.
Oh, she's going to kill us. I forgot.
Oh God, it's all right. We can always do it again next week.
Yeah.
Or no, next week we're at Salisbury. Remember?
Is it next week?
I'm sure it's next week.
Make sure you keep me informed.
I will do. I will double check the tickets when I get home. All right?
It's on the Saturday, and obviously
Yeah.
you want me to meet you in Paul. Places like that.
I think I might look up that pub in London. I think we could be making a trip there one day.
God, you and me in London.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
I have a friend in London. I'll ask him to show us around.
It's very true.
As long as we take him for beer, he will show us around. Look at that car.
Dear. That will have to go on the feed though. I will see if I can draw a little line and go, what is that?
Is Chubb's arm size. I've got to say, if you want to take photos or anything like that, then please feel free, because we've got this Facebooky thing and a Twittery thing, because apparently it's the 21st century.
Huh.
We're not sure about that down here. We're sticking with the 20th. We've only just got used to that, you know. But yeah, Chubb's Arms House built in 1822. Now they're named, it gets its name from Matthew Chubb, who was the mayor of the town in 1613. Because on the 6th of August 1613, we had the Great Fire of Dorchester, where we basically burnt most of the town down. Now, the thing is, there was only one fatality in that fire. It was the cobbler's wife, and she wasn't killed by the fire. 32 days after the original murder. It was a very quick, swift trial.
That was quite quick to be fair. 32 days.
Stay very much.
I got something.
Yeah.
I'll show you later.
And Thomas Hardy witnessed that, and that memory stayed with him for all his life. And actually, Martha Brown became the inspiration for one of his most famous characters. Does anybody know who? Or would you like to hazard a guess? Tess. Because if anybody hasn't read Tess of the D'Urbervilles, spoiler alert, she gets hanged in the end for murder. Okay? So anyway, that is that. So yeah, stay with him. The last public execution in Dorchester was 1858. It's also the year that they stopped public executions, thus later forcing John Lodibert to invent the television to give people something to watch. So 1858, James Seal was hanged here. and he was hanged for the murder of a young kitchen maid called Sarah Guppy. As he broke into the house she was working in, thinking everybody was out at the harvest. She surprised him in the kitchen, so he slit her throat from ear to ear with a small fruit paring knife. He dropped that at the scene. It was found.
Interesting weapon of choice.
He'd been seen in the area, so he was duly arrested, brought here, tried, and executed on top of the prison wall. Now, over the years, many people have been executed there. And in fact, I know public executions were stopped in 1965, but here in Dorchester, we actually kept the hanging shed in the prison in full working order until 1995. And it was only taken down and removed because they were extending the kitchens in the prison and it was in the way. So when they did, I know this because a friend of mine was one of the contractors who went in there and did some of the work on it. And he said it was still there, all working, and they actually took the hinges off the trapdoor and presented them to the governor as a retirement present because he was retiring at the time.
It's a bit of a macabre retirement
Yeah,
present.
but we did actually keep it till 1995 because we're not ones to waste things down here, you know. Well, why get rid of it?
might
You
change
never
their
know.
mind. Yeah, just in case.
Just in case. You know, it's like me, I've got a shed full of stuff and my wife goes to me, why are you keeping that? I said, it may come in handy at some time. She said, no it won't. And then what happens, you can get your life, she'll go, have you got such and such? And I go, I've got just the thing, you see. That's why we don't waste things down here. Now of course, all the people that were executed there, they're actually still there. Because when the prison closed, they did archaeological excavations and they found human remains. One set of which was female, believed that to be Martha Brown. So they're buried in unhallowed ground, which means their restless spirits still wander around the prison and around the grounds, and sometimes maybe outside. And the security guards that work there now, they go round in pairs because they hear voices and footsteps where there should be none, because it's meant to be empty. So anyway, we shall wander on. Now we're going to go down Friary Hill. It's called Friary Hill because there used to be a friary at the bottom. You see, we keep things simple in Dorset, so we don't confuse the visitors. He also had problems with the Pope and various wives and girlfriends. I mean, I can't think of anybody in modern times that's had so much trouble with wives and girlfriends in Europe. Nobody springs to mind, anyway. So anyway, Henry VIII then decided to make himself the head of the church in England, which meant then he could take all the taxes and the money that the church used to raise and send to the Pope in Rome and keep for himself to pay for all these divorces and wars, etc. And when he did that, he kicked all the monks out of the monasteries and the friars out of the friaries, and a lot of them were torn down and destroyed or ruined. For instance, Abbotsbury, who's from Abbotsbury? Yeah, Abbotsbury. Most of Abbotsbury is built of Abbotsbury, which came from the monastery that used to be there. In fact, the only intact building that remains of the monastery there is St. Catherine's Chapel up on the hill. Because being sensible, we thought, fucking if I'm going to go all up there to grab a load of stone, you know. Anyway, now people have reported seeing at the bottom of the hill here, on the bank of the river this side, people have reported seeing a ghostly monk. Now, anybody who tells you they've seen a ghostly monk down here is wrong. There is no ghostly monk. Not what you expect to hear on a ghost walk, is it? The denial of the existence of a ghost. That's because it's a ghostly friar. Easy mistake to make. If you want the ghostly monk, Princess Street. Okay, he was once seen by a taxi driver who dropped somebody off halfway up here. As he turned it at midnight, as he turned his car round in the bottom here, in his headlights he caught sight of this robed and hooded figure. He saw me the next day, he came round to me, he said, Chris, it's all right, keep going. See, I do my own stunts, I can walk backwards and talk at the same time. Just like Tom Cruise, you see. That's it. And he saw me and he said, Chris, I've seen the ghostly monk. I said, where? He said, bottom of Friary Hill. I said, no you didn't. He goes, what do you mean? I said, no ghostly monk down there. He went, oh, thank God for that. I thought I was seeing things. I said, no, I said it was the ghostly friar. I said, if you wanted the monk, you should have been in Princes Street. I can't repeat his reply because he wasn't happy with me over that. So yeah, but yeah, he hasn't really spoken to me since. But yeah, it's on this brass bank here where the monk, the friar has been seen. As I said, Princes Street for the ghostly monk. Now, before we go any further, this is where I find out how brave you are. Because dare you risk crossing to the other side? Because that's what we are going to do. We are going to cross to the other side. And if you are lucky, you may return. And if you do, you can go home and tell all your friends you went on the Dorchester ghost walk and it was brilliant. Because we crossed to the other side. Say it like that, that'll impress them. Okay, the other side of the river, but you don't mention that. You just say crossing to the other side because it's not a lie. So anyway, that's what we shall do. We shall cross to the other side.
I think it's allotments, yeah.
It just looks as if there was a few sort of. Somebody said there's a ghost over there.
Yeah, I think it's allotments. We put them anywhere over here.
It's okay, before we go any further though, this is where I like to do what I call my vampire test. Okay? Because there are some cultures that believe that vampires cannot cross running water. It's not funny, this is serious stuff. Alright?
Yeah, right.
You may find this useful in some stage if you know, chased by a vampire. Okay, they believe that vampires cannot cross running water. So if you find you get to this point, you can go no further because there's some strange force holding you back. Or you get halfway across and suddenly you burst into flame and fall into a pile of ash. I wish you would come sort of end of October when it's a bit chilly, because by that time we could do with a warm up down here. But you may laugh and you may scoff, but I have proof it works. A few years ago I was doing the tour, I had a group of like 20-30 people here. I explained about my vampire test. All of a sudden, the lady in the middle, she put her hand up and said, "Oh,
Get a bit of scenery while we're at it. I got something else up there coming downhill. It was really quick. What was that? Oh.
I've got some friends down here. Yeah, catch up with people, you know. Yeah.
Sorry, you can walk on the walls."
I can walk on the walls.
Huh?
I can walk on the walls, can I?
You can walk on the walls, it's only Roman. No, please feel free to walk on the walls that are exposed, they don't mind. It's good. There's not many places you can walk on a Roman wall.
No.
So, I don't normally come down here, but as we're only a small group, it's easy. We can come down because there's here and here, there are a couple of little stone tiles. There's actually 5 of these around the site, each one engraved with the outline of a sleeping infant. And what they mark is the site of infant burials. So when it was excavated, they found infant buried here, another one here, and there's 3 more around the site. And we're not quite sure why the Romans did that. There are various theories. One is that they didn't want to be too far from their children, and also perhaps they thought that the innocent spirits of those children would watch over and look after the house. And maybe it worked because it's still here nearly 2,000 years later. And the thing is, people who allegedly work in County Hall, I say allegedly because I used to be allegedly employed there, and I didn't really do much work. Nobody does. It's local government, for goodness sake, you know. So the thing is, though, this here, in the summer and on a day like this, people come here to have their lunch because it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's a nice place to have your sandwiches. And people have been sat here having their lunch in it other times, and they've reported hearing a crying baby. So of course you hear a crying baby, you immediately look. But no matter how far they've looked, and they've looked all round, no baby has been found, although the crying was heard. It's almost as if the spirits of those children are still here and can be occasionally heard protecting the house. If you want to go and have a look, you can still see the remains of the original mosaic, so please feel free to have a wander down and have a quick look in at the mosaics and the hypercourse. I'm getting old, the knees buggered. There's various parts of me that are buggered.
Been down here recently, a tour class.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think that paperwork's Roman though.
Eh?
I don't think that paperwork is Roman though.
No, that paperwork's probably not Roman, no.
Don't dig.
No, it's not time for you to dig, girlie.
There was a tour here today, but it's not there. We do so many times a month. Yeah, I think I missed one last week or something. Oh, here we are. Next one's just I know. I thought it was there. I know. Yeah, we do so many.
Does there more around there? Yeah. Eh? Ah.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? Yeah. Imagine as a kid I used to play here before they built all that structure, so those mosaics and that, I used to play all the time. Summer holidays, we used to go out in the morning and come back when it got dark. Couldn't inherit the throne properly, so it went to his dad's brother James II. Don't like it. So anyway, the Duke of Monmouth, he landed at Lyme Regis and he raised an army here in the southwest in Devon and Dorset and Somerset to take on the king. And they had a few little skirmishes and battles and things. In fact, the first skirmish was in Bridport, just after he landed with his little army and the local militia. So anyway, it eventually culminated in the Battle of Sedgemoor, which unfortunately the Duke of Monmouth lost. So the Duke of Monmouth attempted to flee back to France so he could try and raise the funds to have another go, but he was captured in Campford Chase in the east of the county, taken to London, and on Tower Hill he had his head chopped off. Now James II wasn't happy with us rebellious folk down here, so all those that had been captured in various stages were put on trial for treason and high treason, and there were a series of trials held. There was one held in Winchester, one here in Dorchester, and another in Taunton, and they became known as the Bloody Assizes because of the number of people that were sentenced to death. Now a lot of those people had their sentence commuted to life, and they were transported to the Bahamas. I think, hey, that's not bad, is it? One minute they're going to hang you, next you go to the Bahamas. Not so nice was because if you survived the journey on the ships, then you were worked to death as slave labour on the sugar plantations. So anyway, the trial here in Dorchester was actually held in the Antelope Hotel, now Antelope Walk behind us, in the Oak Room. Which if I've got time, I'll go and have a quick squiz and I'll show you where it is in a minute. The Oak Room just behind. Now, George Jeffreys himself, he died in the Tower of London in 1695. And his body was smuggled out of the Tower of London, brought here to Dorchester, and at midnight, on a dark and moonless night, when the clouds had covered the stars, 6 good men and true of Dorchester dug a ruddy dirt big hole and chucked him in, and then filled it in and covered it over so nobody knows where George Jeffreys is. Not even George Jeffreys himself. And those 6 men swore a solemn oath never to reveal the location of George Jeffreys' grave, and they took that to their own graves themselves. So George Jeffreys has been seen wandering in various parts of the town, particularly in the cellars in tunnels beneath our feet, because there's a whole load of tunnels underneath this town, searching for his mortal remains. He was once seen by a lady who was worked in what was the opticians next to the church there. She was down in the cellar where they kept the records, and she swears she saw this red cloaked figure go past her and through the bricked up doorway into the tunnels beneath. So yeah, George Jeffreys still wanders around looking for his body, but you ain't gonna find it. So anyway, now we're going to go and meet one of my heroes. This fella.
No, Cara, this way. That was weird. He picked up the dog. Oh, okay. That's a pick up animals. Oh. That was weird.
Look at this.
Origami.
Yes. How cute.
That was very weird. I've literally had this app for 4 days. I've recorded Fawny so many times, and his appearance, his face, nothing has ever changed. That's very weird. I only put it on that one because I thought I might catch someone wandering past the mirrors.
I thought something.
He's known as the Dorset poet because he wrote in the old Dorset dialect. And now he's fighting this. It's time to find a better place. Not with folk are left behind, will always be a kept in mind. I said, teacher, this is the man that taught Thomas Hardy. Do you know the name of the doctor that looked after John Merrick?
Is it the person you just said?
Sir Frederick Treves, yes. Do you know where Sir Frederick Treves was born? Yes. Do you know where in Dorchester Sir Frederick Treves was born? Quite close. I'll show you when we move on in a minute, but we'll take a slight detour and we'll see where he was born. So anyway, but going back to William Barnes, as I said, he was an architect, and he's the one that gave Galpin's Folly its name. And Galpin's Folly is the time clock, because it's not actually an original part of the Corn Exchange. The Corn Exchange in Town Hall was completed around about 1847, 1848, and the clock was added in about 1863-64 at the behest of Alderman Galpin, who was a self-important fella, thought the town should have its own clock, so he commissioned and raised a lot of the money for it to be built. Now when William, being an architect himself, saw the designs and the plans and the completed thing, he thought it was horrible, the way it was sort of stuck onto the corner of the Corn Exchange and added. And he's the one that called it Galpin's Folly. Now, the important thing here is William's left foot, because when his statue was unveiled, his feet were together, but over time, his left foot was creeping forward, and it's said that when William steps off his plinth, Galpin's Folly will fall, which is why it's always very important when you're coming down the high street, check William's left foot. Okay, now St. Peter's Church here is haunted as well. On a side note, John White, the Puritan divine, is buried in the porch. The church is open. If you lift the backs up, you can see his grave. But the church itself is haunted by the ghost of the Reverend Nathaniel Templeman. And he was the vicar here. He died in 1813. But again, he was another one of these very strict Puritan type vicars. Basically, if it was fun, no. So that meant singing, dancing, drinking, anything basically. It was like. So when he died, everybody went, hooray! But not too loud because that would have been disrespectful. But it meant they could celebrate Christmas properly for the first time in years. So that Christmas Eve, the sexton and the church warden, they cleaned the church, they swept the pews, polished the brasses, cleaned the floors. And they filled the church with boughs of holly, ivy, pine, and that, and they lit pure beeswax candles so it looked and smelt wonderful. And after they finished their work, one of the sisters said, I reckon we deserve a drink. And the other says, I reckon he does. Now, instead of popping next door to the pub that used to be there, which was the site of a grisly murder, but a story for another day, one of them said, tell you what I do, I'll nip in the sacristy and I'll get us a drop of communion wine. Now that's naughty, nicking the communion wine, isn't it? But he was extra special naughty, because what he did is he got the two best chalices, filled them to the brim, and took them out into the church. And they sat there, admiring their handiwork, and they look at each other, and they take the chalices, and they raise them in toast, a Merry Christmas. And they're about to take that first sip. And as they just before they do so, Nathaniel Templeman's spirit rose up in front of them and cursed them most horribly. Oh, you wicked evil men, how dare you defile the house of the Lord with your drunken ways? Be gone from this place and never touch a drop of the demon drink again. In panic, they dropped the chalices and fled from the church. And from that day forward, neither man touched a drop of drink again, which I'm sure you will agree is a terrible, terrible curse to put upon a good drinking man. Anyway, We're near the end of our little tour, and the best place to end a walk like this is the dead centre of town. But before we do that, I'll take you and show you where Sir Frederick Treves, the famous surgeon, was born. I'm sorry, are we boring you, are we? Oh.
That's about right. Nearly killed myself going for the gate. I wanted to be with you first. No, it's alright, I just got stuck, it's fine.
No reply. It must all be out. So anyway, as I said, this is All Saints Churchyard. Now there's been a church on this site for hundreds of years. This particular incarnation of the church was completed in 1870. It was then decommissioned or retired by the Church of England in 1970. But one thing it does contain that has survived through the centuries and through various rebuilds, etc., is the marble effigy of Matthew Chubb, the mayor from the Great Fire, who died in 1617, and he's got a rather fine marble memorial in there of him carved out and laid upon it, and his ghost has been seen coming out of the church and turning as if to go up around the town he did so much to help save and rebuild. The other thing to notice here is the yew tree. It's got that yew tree there, and of course this yew tree here. Yew trees, you'll find a yew tree or a holly tree in most churchyards, and the symbolism of the yew tree predates Christianity, because the yew tree is a symbol of life and death. It symbolises life because it's evergreen, and also they live for a very long time. There's actually a yew tree in a churchyard in Tiverton that's been dated to over 3,000 years old. This particular tree, given its size and its girth, is probably about 1,000 years old. And it's still fine and healthy and thriving, and they will live. So like I say, that's why they represent life. But they represent death, because their berries are red like blood, and if you eat them, they will kill you. So children, don't go eating berries out in the wild unless you're absolutely sure you know what they are. Okay. Another ghost that's been seen here is there's a ghost of a nun can sometimes be seen walking across the grass there and through into the back of the Blue Rattle pub next door, because there used to be a convent or a nunnery on the site as well as the church. Now perhaps the most important thing to note is the graveyard itself. It's flat, and you'll notice there are tombstones and memorials up against the wall, laid flat on the grass and that. And you'll find that in a lot of churchyards, and that's all thanks to the Victorians, because they thought a lot of these churchyards were beginning to look untidy, with the gravestones leaning this way and that way, and all the weeds and higgledy-piggledy and the humps and bumps. So what they decided to do was to uproot all the gravestones and things and plough the churchyards flat. You can still find the odd one that hasn't been... Oh, flick 'em out. Yeah, flick 'em out. The Dorset word for a bat is a flittermate. Yeah. Lovely, aren't they? They're lovely. Oh yeah, so they ploughed them flat. Now, Thomas Hardy, despite his reputation of being a grumpy old bugger, wasn't really. He was quite the romantic. And he thought when this happened we'd lost something, and we have. We've lost that sort of romance and beauty, because if you go to an old churchyard that hasn't been vandalised by the Victorians, they do have their own beauty and tranquility, and they are peaceful, not scary places. So he thought this was terrible, so he wrote a poem about it called The Level Churchyard, and in it he gives voice to the residents, and they are speaking to us. And the poem starts with them calling us passengers, because that is what we are, like them. We're all just passengers on this journey of life. And so it goes like this. O passenger, pray stay and list to our sighs and piteous groans, half stifled by this jumbled mess of raked memorial stones. We late lamented resting here, are mixed to human jam, and each for each cries out in fear, I know not which I am. The wicked people herself or I, the local trumpet, from restorations of thy fame, from smoothings of thy sword, from zealous churchmen's pick and flame, deliver us, O Lord. Amen. Anyway, thank you all very much for joining me tonight. It's been a pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed it. And yeah, we've got the flitter mouses dancing around now, which is always a lovely sight to see. So anyway, I wish you all a safe and pleasant journey home, and no matter the distance, whether it be near or far, and may your God or gods or the non-theologically based belief system of your choice go with you. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, jasmine. Yeah. Yeah, night jasmine, it smells lovely. Anyway, thank you again. Anyway,
Thank you.
Cheers. Shall we take a toddler along? Oh God. Don't do this again. I caught someone walking in the middle. Oh. I think the camera had shut off by that point. Andrew! Yeah!
Bye.
I thought we were going to have a drink and what's it? Fucking hell, that made me jump.
Yes.
Yes.